Beauty and the Beast is a story that challenges us to understand what real beauty is, what true love means. And in this story, what we understand from watching it is that true beauty is not on the outside, but rather it is a reflection of who we are on the inside. And so this is the story of the transformation of the beast actually going from beast to inner beauty and sort of refining the beast within. Before I get further into this video, I want to briefly introduce myself. My name is Salena, Sailor of Psychology. I have a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, and I'm very passionate about analyzing the hidden psychology in movies and literature. So today's video is all about Beauty and the Beast. I will be analyzing the hidden symbols, archetypes, and meanings of this movie. The story begins with this enchantress, and she walks into this castle where this prince is. And the prince, of course, as we know, is going to turn into this beast, right? And so this all starts with this prince's vanity, conceitedness, arrogance, selfishness, cruelty, and really just mean spirit. And so this enchantress, when she walks into the castle, she sort of portrays herself as this old woman. She just needs a place to stay, right? And so, of course, the prince, he is just absolutely mean to her, and he's not a nice person at all. And so, what does he do? He doesn't offer to help her. And so, what happens is that she curses him, and this curse turns him into this ugly beast, right? And so, what does this curse truly tell us? What is the hidden psychology of this curse? The curse actually represents whatever was on the inside was personified on the outside. So, therefore, the beast was actually personified, that inner beast. So, this is the beginning of the story where everything starts from here. And what we're looking at with this beast construct is actually what is known as the shadow archetype. Okay. And so this shadow archetype is actually going to be transformed throughout the story, throughout Beauty and the Beast, right? And so this shadow is going to end up turning into this different archetype of this hero archetype, this lover archetype, this beauty archetype and construct. Now I want to talk about Belle and, what is she like? And this other character named Gaston. You see, because Gaston, he actually is representing this sort of similar archetype of the beast. Him and the beast are actually not that different if you think about it. Because if the beast was never transformed, into this beast from the prince, then him and Gaston wouldn't be that different, would they? Right? Because think about it. Gaston, he is also sort of self-absorbed, narcissistic, vain, cruel, mean. He may not act in certain ways cruel to everyone, but ultimately he does later on in the story, as we see, he does exhibit these sort of cruel traits, right? Which ends up turning Gaston into a villain rather than him turning into the hero or lover archetype. And so we will be exploring that. So now I want to talk about Belle. And Belle, what does she represent? What archetype is she? She actually represents the hero archetype or the heroine archetype. And that is because she is the true embodiment of beauty. Belle in French means beauty, right? And so this is that hero. This is already a person that is conscious of beauty, of love, of having certain qualities and character about herself, right? And I'm really going to get into Belle. So Gaston and Belle and their dynamic is really interesting. And this is what I want to talk about because we will sort of be comparing and contrasting the dynamic of Belle and Gaston versus Belle and the Beast and what that sort of tells us. So, Belle and Gaston, you can see that they're quite incompatible. Gaston makes fun of Belle for reading. He sort of mocks her. He even throws her books. And Belle doesn't really appreciate that, but she's not a rude person. So, yes, so Gaston and Belle, they are not compatible. Gaston, he, like I said, is so self absorbed. He doesn't really take any interest in Belle, in her personality, in her dreams, in her wonder and her curiosity. He doesn't really make the effort to really and truly get to know Belle for who she truly is. So people might feel bad for Gaston and say, well, he was trying his best. He just wanted to be with Belle, right? But what people don't realize is that, I mean, you probably do as you watch the story, right? We see that, he really is manipulative and he really is not the one for her. He proposes to her and he says, Belle, you will be my little wife. We will have strong boys just like me. Belle, if I may say, she is sort of disgusted by Gaston. She's appalled by him. She is like, I don't want to be your wife, his little wife. I believe there's even this song in the movie. She just sees him as this big-headed buffoon. She's not into him whatsoever. And why is that? I really want to get into that. Why is Belle not into Gaston, right? Because Gaston is the village's most seemingly competent man. He appears to be the most successful or the best at everything. Gaston is this, Gaston is that. LeFou, his best friend, is always hyping him up. And so are the villagers. They're like pedestalizing Gaston. And why doesn't Belle like that? Like, if he is the best option, she still doesn't want him. Why is that? So I want to get into Belle's family because when we understand the developmental psychology, we will truly understand that hidden aspect of why Belle doesn't go for Gaston. And then I want to speak about, you know, Gaston and why he doesn't change and why, if anything, he regresses in this story. So, Belle, her family, her father Maurice, he plays an extremely important role. He sort of embodies this wise man archetype as well as the father archetype, right? He is actually an excellent role model for Belle. And this is because, you know, we can see, first of all, that he loves Belle so much. He wants to take this rose back for Belle. He won't leave without getting her this rose. All he can think about is protecting his daughter, being there for his daughter, and not just that, but even alone, his personality, the way that he is. He is an amazing father. And so he is this creative, innovative inventor. He's also described as sort of eccentric, but he is extraordinary. He's different, he's unique, and he thinks for himself. He is a loving person, right? And he truly cares. When Belle in the live action asks her father, what was her mother like? What was she like? What does Maurice say? Maurice, he really views Belle's mother with such high regard, such high value. And you can see that Maurice truly cherished Belle's mother. Imagine a father sort of describing his wife with such qualities, the mother of his children with these sort of qualities, being smart, intelligent, warm, kind, loving, giving, unique. Maurice describes Belle's mother as fearless and ahead of her time. When he describes her mother with those sort of qualities, and imagine a child hearing that. of course she's going to be in awe of that, and she's going to think about, wow, if my mother was this way, right? And my father loved my mother. I look at the way that my father is, and they loved each other so much. And not only that, but they loved me so much. My mother loved me. And so this child, even if her mother is not physically present, right, she is emotionally present, and she left this eternal sort of love for her. And there's this security in that for a child when they see that their parents loved each other and also loved them so much. So Belle embodies all those characteristics of her parents. And that is why, right, when Gaston comes along, when he is there, Belle is not really impressed by Gaston. If anything, Belle knows better. She knows that she should go for someone who is more like her, who shares the same values and morals as her. So when children have that security with their parents, when we learn about this in developmental psychology, we know that oftentimes children having a good relationship with their parents, with, their father, for example, like the way that Belle does, that's sort of what appears to be a secure attachment style. It helps that child have a sense of security in themselves. And so when they do make relationships, they are able to have a healthy sense of what it means to be in a relationship or friendship. And they are able to better show up in that relationship. That is why Belle, she has that sort of strong bond with her father. She has that also with her mother, the love with her mother, that love that she has with her family. It lays a foundation for her in the story. And so it gives her strength. It teaches her about sacrifice, wanting what's best for another person, like her father. Like, she takes her father's place. He's trapped in the castle by the beast, and she sacrifices her own happiness for her father. And so we even see that sort of caregiver archetype in Belle, the hero, the caregiver as well. And she will do whatever it takes to make sure that her father is safe, and that's a really admirable quality about her, right? And so she's not compatible with someone like Gaston, right? When Gaston comes along, do we think that she really would go for someone like that? The answer is no, right? Because at the end of the day, she is not familiar with his personality. She's familiar with true love, with true care. She actually looks up to her father. And so I want to compare sort of Maurice and his sort of parental father archetype to Gaston. And, because they're kind of opposites in certain ways, right? Because Maurice, in my opinion, he's actually a better example of this sort of masculine type, him being truly a good father to Belle, protecting his family, holding it down. I think those are admirable masculine qualities rather than, Gaston. And so I want to talk about Gaston a little bit more, right? And that sort of pedestal that he's put on. Gaston is pedestalized, and he's enabled by the society, by the village, right? By all the villagers, essentially, other than Belle and her father, right? Gaston is enabled. His behavior is enabled, and that self absorption just grows and grows and grows. And that narcissism and grandiosity about him, he's never really able to become conscious about who he is. And that's sort of the difference between Gaston and the beast, right? Because the beast, if you think about it, the curse sort of forced him to think about himself, to really look at himself in the mirror and see his behavior. Because guess what? For the beast, poor behavior has consequences, right? But for Gaston, his behavior doesn't, I guess in a way, Belle not falling for him is sort of a consequence of his behavior, and he does, eventually leads to his downfall, but he never really becomes conscious of it. That is sort of Gaston's issue, is that he could never put his ego aside and see himself as wrong. You know, he has to be right. He has to be the best. It's all me, right? And so if you think about it, him viewing Belle as worthy of being with is truly because what he sees Belle as is truly an extension of himself, because Belle is beautiful on the outside and she's hard to get to. Even LeFou and him describe Belle in the live action as having dignity. LeFou says, "Isn't dignity attractive?" Right? And Gaston is like, "Yeah, it is." Because it's like she doesn't just want him, you know, but here's the thing. He views Belle as a prize to be won and not a person to be loved or cared for truly or cherished, but rather an extension, like I said, of himself, of his vanity, of his narcissism, self absorption, you know, just to enhance his sort of self image and self concept. He's not looking for more than that. And so that is a huge flaw in him. And that is why Belle doesn't go for him, right? But unfortunately, like I said, the villagers, they pedestalize him and enable him. And so he doesn't learn until he dies, essentially. And when he dies, he's probably still didn't even learn on the fall down. I really want to talk about the journey of Belle and the Beast's love and how that sort of grows and what that reveals to us, how they bond. So Belle, when she's trapped by the beast, what happens is she sees that the castle is enchanted. And so what do these enchanted objects mean? What is the hidden psychology of these enchanted objects? Well, what they represent is they represent this sort of collective subconscious mentor of the beast. They help Belle as well, and the beast sort of grow as people learn about themselves. And right, so we see that Lumiere, for example, Lumiere means light, and he represents sort of this trickster archetype, kind of tricking them into falling in love, doing things together, and you know, getting to know each other. He's kind of behind that, you know, trying to make it happen. And if you think about it, maybe the beast also subconsciously wants that, you know, he wants to learn, he wants to grow, he wants to see Belle coming into the castle, you know, could this be the one? And then we have Cogsworth, and he kind of represents the guardian, right? He's kind of more by the books, following the rules, you know, this needs to be done according to this. And then we have the caregiver archetype, which is Mrs. Potts. And she kind of represents that great aspect of that, you know, care and love. And her child is Chip, who's a little teacup, right? And he kind of represents the innocent archetype, that kindred child spirit that is innocent and pure and wants to do, you know, what's right, and, you know, is just loving. And so these are kind of all aspects of the beast. Every character in this story is kind of a manifestation of the beast's subconscious mind. Belle is escaping the castle. She's trying to escape. The wolves come after her. And then the beast comes in and he tries to save Belle so that she doesn't die. When he does that, he gets injured. And then Belle, she could escape, but she saves the beast and she helps to heal him. And so it's in that dynamic of, you know, saving each other, sacrificing one's life for another. They grow in love, they learn about each other, they get to know one another, and they actually find that they have a lot more in common than they thought. It's really beautiful to see, right? And the beast learns that Belle loves books. You know, he wants to do something special for her. And so he has this beautiful library, right? Because the castle has this huge library. And he says, you know, all these books are for you, read them. So Belle starts to read, and, you know, while she's helping the beast heal, she's reading to the beast, and they start reading together. Romance, Romeo and Juliet. They start to really bond about love, and it's really nice. So We can compare this to Gaston and Belle. Did Gaston take any interest in Belle's intellect, in her emotionality? No, he didn't. But on the other hand, we have the beast. He's taking interest in that, right? And we also see that it's not just that, they relate on another level. And this is because Belle also represents the rebel archetype. You see, in the village, we see that they describe her as odd and weird, right? They're not putting her on a pedestal. They think that her learning, having curiosity, being different makes her weird. Her father, Maurice, he says, no, you're not weird, Belle. And so it's interesting to see that. So it's the same thing when she's talking to the beast. The beast is saying that when all the other people in the castle are around, Cogsworth, Lumiere, Mrs. Potts, Chip, they're all laughing together. But then when he enters the room, it's like quiet, right? And so Belle relates to that, to the village, feeling that way. They think I'm odd. And so what does this represent, right? This represents this sort of outsider archetype, feeling like one is an outsider. The beast feels like an outsider. He's now this beast. He feels misunderstood, sort of different, left out, you know? And Belle, she was also feeling left out, misunderstood, put down by people. So they can relate to that as well. And that bonds them, right? Because think about it, to truly bond with someone, we have to be able to understand them emotionally, who they are on the inside, their heart. And it takes a lot of vulnerability to be able to do that, right? To really get to know that person and embrace them for who they are. So we see that, letting their sort of guards down, being able to be honest and open and care for one another. They relate. Next, what we see in the story is they have the ball and they dance together, right? And then what happens is that the beast, he has this sort of magic mirror. And this magic mirror is what he used to be able to see into the outside world, right? While he was trapped in the castle, not being able to go out. He gives this mirror to Belle, and Belle looks at her father through the mirror. And she sees that her father is in trouble, because what happened was that when he went back to the village, he was trying to save Belle and convince everyone, get Gaston's help to say that there's this beast that imprisoned my daughter. And so Belle wants to go back, right? And so what do we learn about what happened with Gaston and that manipulativeness is that Gaston, he is pretending like he didn't see the castle and all of that, and that Maurice is crazy and he's trying to manipulate Maurice. He even slaps him in the live action, ties him up. And when they're back in the castle, in the village, he tells everyone he's crazy. Then Maurice says, Agatha saw. Agatha is actually the enchantress, but they don't know that in the village, right? And what does Gaston say? He says, who would believe ugly Agatha, right? So we're kind of seeing that parallel of Gaston and the beast insulting Agatha, the enchantress. Little does he know who he's talking about, right? But this is all part of the story, right? And so Agatha, she's actually this sort of trickster archetype too. She's this catalyst for what is going on. See that Belle goes back to the village to rescue her father, and she takes that mirror with her, and she shows everyone what the beast looks like through the mirror to prove that he is real and that her father isn't crazy. And then what do? Gaston and the villagers, they insult the beast. They say, this beast needs to be killed. And Gaston, he appears to be very jealous, and he is saying that this is a monster. And what does Belle say? Belle says, Gaston, he's not a monster, you are. And that is really interesting, right? Because we do see that Gaston is really becoming this monster, this villain, this beast construct. And that fool archetype, he's not just the fool, he is truly the shadow and that villain archetype. So what happens after this is that, of course, Gaston and everyone, they try to kill the beast. While he's talking to the beast, he's insulting him. He's telling him, did you really think that she would really like you, that she would want to be with you, a beast? And what this really reveals, the psychology of this, is that he's actually kind of talking about himself in a way. You know, he was feeling incompetent. He was feeling like he wasn't good enough, Gaston. And so he feels the need to tear someone else down to make himself feel better about himself. Ultimately, this leads to the demise of Gaston and of the shadow construct, right? Because when Gaston goes in for that hit and, you know, the beast, he actually kind of retracts from hitting Gaston and he realizes he doesn't really have to do this. He let Belle go. He sacrificed his own love for Belle and the curse not breaking for Belle because he truly loved her. And she comes back now and he can see that, you know, that's good enough. He doesn't need to kill this man. But Gaston, like I said, he goes in, and what happens is that he actually falls back after he kills the beast. But he's really not killing the beast. He is actually killing himself, who's the real beast. And so what happens is that the shadow falls and the beauty awakens. The true beauty and the hero and the lover rise. And that's what happens, right? The curse falls, the curse is broken, and the prince wakes up again. But now the prince is not just any prince, the prince is beautiful on the inside, just as now he looks on the outside. And so that's personified, that true beauty is personified. And so everything in the castle also changes. You know, what is the psychology of that as well? The villagers remembering the people of the castle itself, and the castle remembering the people of the castle remembering the villagers. Well, see, this curse that Agatha and the enchantress put on everyone was not just a curse on the beast, but actually a curse on everyone. It wasn't a curse, actually, it was a blessing. It was this enchantment that makes us become conscious of what was pushed down subconsciously, what we were unconscious of. And this beauty is what we become conscious of, this character, right? And so you even see that the season changed. And this is what I lastly want to speak about. Winter is now over. You know, the castle was stuck in this sort of eternal winter as the rose petal was falling, right? So what happens is that spring comes, and spring, what is spring the season of? It's the season of flowers, of that rose. And we saw that, you know, the rose ultimately represented love. Even, you know, Belle's father giving her the rose, wanting to give her the rose, right? And so it's that beauty. That's what that represents, spring, right? But before we can get to spring, we are in winter, and winter is the season of destruction, darkness, and what happens before one is sort of blossomed, spring. The rose petal wilting and dying ultimately, it represented not just the curse, but also ultimately the season of death, which is winter. And so that's what we were seeing. And winter is the season of learning, of self reflection, of what falls like snow and dies before it can ultimately birth again. What I want to leave for this video is I want to leave this message that remember that every season is not forever. Winter for you, for example, may seem forever. It may seem like you are in this phase of life forever, but seasons change and people change. Life changes, and winter is part of life, just like spring, just like summer, just like fall. Winter is ultimately part of life. If you embrace winter, it is that season of learning about yourself, of falling before one can rise. I want to leave this sort of message for this video. And I really hope that you enjoyed watching this video just as much as I enjoyed making this video. I'm really passionate about psychology, about being able to break down and analyze all these little hidden messages and subconscious symbols. And I describe myself as sailing the subconscious seas, right? And so there was all these subconscious archetypes and symbols that we explored today in Beauty and the Beast. And I will be doing this as well in other videos. We will be exploring many different types of movies, TV shows, mythology, literature, you name it, and being able to put that all together. So my name again is Salena, Sailor of Psychology. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. I would really appreciate it if you also, in the comments told me what you liked about this video or what you connected to, maybe what you saw in the movie that I didn't mention or that you loved seeing. I want this channel to be a space for us to be able to discuss and talk about hidden psychology and learn together. So, yes, that is all for today. Thank you, folks, or I should say fellow sailors.